The possession of Clara Germana Cele, South Africa's witnessed exorcism before 170 witnesses. A 16-year-old orphan levitated and spoke languages she'd never learned. Then her skin blistered from holy water. Long before possession cases became fodder for cinema, before the tropes and templates were established by Hollywood, a case unfolded in the remote mission stations of colonial South Africa that would become one of the most thoroughly documented examples of alleged demonic possession in history. The witness testimony alone separates this case from countless others lost to oral tradition or dismissed as folklore. 170 people, nuns, priests, mission workers, students, and community members, watched a 16-year-old girl rise into the air without assistance, her body defying the fundamental laws of physics. What they witnessed at St. Michael's Mission in Natal between 1906 and 1907 would be recorded in Catholic institutional archives, preserved not for sensationalism, but as documentation of events that demanded theological response. This is the story of Clara Germana Cele and what happened when a young orphan confessed to making a pact she could not explain. Clara Germana Cele arrives at the narrative in 1906 as a 16-year-old orphan living under the care of the Sisters of Mercy at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa. The mission serves as both orphanage and school, a place of refuge and education for children who have nowhere else to go. By all accounts preserved in the mission records, Clara has been a normal, cheerful young woman, engaged in her studies, obedient to the sisters, unremarkable in any way that would predict what comes next. The mission operates according to strict Catholic principles, with daily prayers, confession, and mass attendance as regular features of life. It is during one of these routine confessions that Clara makes an admission to Father Erasmus Herner that changes everything. She tells him, through the wooden screen that separates confessor from penitent, that she has made a pact with the devil. When pressed, she cannot explain why she did it. She cannot articulate what compelled her to make such a declaration or agreement. She simply states that it happened. What follows Clara's confession does not unfold gradually. The change is swift and unmistakable. Within days, her behavior transforms completely. The cheerful young woman the sisters have known becomes someone or something else. She displays an immediate and violent aversion to anything sacred. Crosses cause her to recoil. The mention of holy names provokes rage. When the sisters attempt to bring her to chapel, she resists with a strength that should not be possible for a girl of her size and build. The first levitation occurs shortly after, witnessed by multiple members of the mission community. Clara rises from the ground, her body suspended in the air at a height of several feet, with no visible means of support. She remains there, floating, until prayers are said and she descends. The witnesses are certain of what they have seen. There is no trickery possible in the open courtyard where it occurs, no hidden wires or apparatus that could achieve such an effect. The event is documented immediately in the mission records. The manifestations intensify. Clara begins speaking in languages she has never been taught. Witnesses report hearing fluent German, French, and Polish coming from her mouth, languages she has had no exposure to in her sheltered mission upbringing. Other utterances are recorded that witnesses cannot identify at all, languages or dialects entirely unknown to anyone present. The linguistic phenomenon is witnessed repeatedly, often in the presence of multiple nuns and priests who can verify that Clara has never studied these languages. She demonstrates knowledge of things she should not know. When sacred objects, rosaries, medals, small crosses, are hidden in the room where she is being kept, Clara reacts with violent aversion even when the objects are concealed from her sight. She identifies their locations with precision. When Father Herner tests this phenomenon systematically, hiding objects in different locations and observing her reactions, the pattern holds. Each time a sacred object is introduced, Clara reacts. Each time it is removed, the reaction ceases. There is no line of sight that would allow her to observe the placements. The physical effects escalate in ways that defy medical explanation. When holy water is sprinkled on Clara's skin, witnesses report that her flesh blisters as if burned. The marks are visible, raised welts that appear within moments of contact. When the water dries, the blistering fades, leaving no permanent scarring. This phenomenon is witnessed by the sisters who care for her, by Father Herner, and by numerous others at the mission. It is repeated multiple times, always with the same result. Medical examination can find no dermatological condition that would explain such a reaction to water that has been blessed, but remains chemically identical to ordinary water. The strength Clara displays during her episodes becomes a serious concern for those trying to care for her. She requires multiple adults to restrain her during violent outbursts. Witnesses document that her physical power during these episodes far exceeds what should be possible for a teenage girl. The nuns who have cared for her since childhood watch in horror as someone they know becomes someone they do not recognize. Father Erasmus Herner and Father Mansuet Langel make the decision to perform an exorcism. The two priests have access to the Roman ritual, the formal Catholic rite for exorcism that has been codified over centuries of church practice. The ritual is not undertaken lightly. The Church requires extensive investigation before authorizing such a procedure, precisely because the bar for determining genuine possession as opposed to mental illness or fraud must be exceptionally high. In Clara's case, the evidence meets the criteria established by the ritual itself. She demonstrates knowledge of hidden things. She speaks in languages unknown to her. She displays strength beyond natural capacity. She shows violent aversion to sacred objects and language. Most significantly, she levitates in front of assembled witnesses, a phenomenon for which no natural explanation can be found. The first exorcism session takes place in 1906, with the entire mission community assembled in prayer. The ritual follows the prescribed format of the Roman ritual, with Father Herner and Father Langel taking turns reading the prayers of exorcism while Clara is restrained on a bed in the mission chapel. Witnesses report that during the ritual, Clara's voice changes, becoming deeper, more guttural, speaking with authority and malice that seems impossible from her throat. The entity within her responds to the prayers with rage, cursing in multiple languages, some of which witnesses recognize and others they do not. The levitation occurs again during the ritual itself, witnessed now not just by mission residents, but by community members who have been called to pray. Clara rises from the bed, despite the hands attempting to hold her down, her body lifting into the air in full view of everyone present. The witnesses number approximately 170 people, all of whom later provide consistent testimony about what they observed. The first exorcism provides temporary relief, but does not end the possession. Clara returns to a more stable state for a period of weeks, but the manifestations resume. The decision is made to perform a second, more intensive exorcism in 1907. This session lasts longer, with Father Herner and Father Langel alternating prayers over the course of hours, while the assembled community maintains constant prayer support. The documentation preserved in mission records describes Clara's physical and verbal resistance to the ritual, the repeated levitations, the attempts by the entity to break free from the restraints and from the prayers themselves. The priests persist, the community prays, and finally, after hours of ritual exorcism, Clara collapses, exhausted, and when she opens her eyes again, those who know her recognize the young woman they remember. The entity is gone. Clara Germana Cele remains at St. Michael's Mission after the exorcism concludes. The Sisters of Mercy continue to care for her, and she resumes her education and daily life within the mission community. Those who knew her before the possession observe that she is changed by the experience in subtle ways, quieter, more withdrawn, carrying the weight of something that cannot be easily articulated. She does not speak publicly about what happened to her or what she experienced during the periods when the entity controlled her body. The mission records document her continued residence there, but do not elaborate on the personal aftermath of her ordeal. What the records do preserve is the testimony of the witnesses the detailed observations of the priests who performed the exorcism, and the institutional documentation of events that the Catholic Church considers credible evidence of genuine demonic possession. The case of Clara Germana Cele achieves significance in the study of possession precisely because of the number and credibility of its witnesses. 170 people observed the levitations. Multiple witnesses with knowledge of foreign languages confirmed that Clara spoke in tongues she had never learned. The physical effects of holy water on her skin were documented by medical observers. The mission records were created not for public dissemination, but for internal church documentation, giving them an evidentiary status different from accounts created for publication or profit. When researchers in the 20th century bring the case to wider attention, they note that it represents one of the most thoroughly witnessed possession cases in documented history. Catholic demonologists cite the Clara Germana Cele case as a textbook example of the diagnostic criteria for possession established in the Roman ritual. She demonstrates all the classical signs simultaneously: knowledge of hidden things, speaking in unknown languages, display of strength beyond natural capacity, and violent aversion to sacred objects. The levitation witnessed by so many people adds a dimension that researchers find particularly compelling because it represents a physical phenomenon that cannot be attributed to hallucination or misperception when observed by such a large group. The institutional documentation through Catholic mission records provides a paper trail that has allowed the case to be studied and referenced for over a century. The case raises questions that extend beyond the theological. If Clara's experiences were the result of mental illness, how does one account for the levitations witnessed by 170 people? If the languages were instances of glossolalia, the spontaneous utterance of speech-like sounds, how were they recognized as actual languages by witnesses fluent in those tongues? If the reaction to holy water was psychosomatic, how did visible blistering appear and then disappear on her skin? The skeptical explanations that can be applied to many possession cases encounter significant obstacles when confronted with the testimony and documentation preserved from St. Michael's mission in 1906 and 1907. Clara Germana Cele passes from the historical record after the conclusion of her exorcism, her later life unrecorded in the sources that document her possession. What remains is the testimony of those who witnessed what happened to her, preserved in archives that continue to be studied by researchers investigating the phenomenon of possession across cultures and centuries. Her case stands alongside other documented possessions as evidence that continues to challenge materialist explanations of human experience and consciousness. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.